I mean, what do y'all think? Most beautiful city in the United States? Who's to say?
Hey y'all, welcome back to A Sense of Travel. I'm Michael. I'm on a mission on this channel to document all 5 senses of as many cities, countries, and natural landmarks around the world as I possibly can, so that I can immerse you imaginatively into these spaces. Well, today, we are in Chicago, Illinois, America's second city, although, in my humble opinion, it's better than New York. I'm stoked to bring you guys along, the Windy City, so let's get started. I once read that Chicago is the most American major city in the United States. Now, there's a lot of room for debate here, but on paper, there are a few reasons this could make sense. It's in the Midwest, for one. It's the setting for so many John Hughes-directed American classics, like Ferris Bueller, Home Alone, Christmas Vacation. This list could go on for pages. And it doesn't have the same coastal immigration history as other major US cities. But all these facts aside, that quintessential middle American city feeling doesn't quite land until you've experienced Chicago yourself. With a population of nearly 3 million people and a metro area population of over 9 million, Chicago is not a place that can be captured in just photos or blog writing alone. Now today, my mission is to bring you into the Chicago experience immersively through all 5 senses of the city. What smells capture the Chicago scentscape? What sights are quintessential to the Chicago identity? What does the air feel like on a crisp autumn day here? And what tastes define the Chicago culinary palette? Well, let's dive into the Chicago experience together. The Chicago Loop is perhaps the most famous and iconic part of America's second city and sits right at the core of Chicago's downtown. At the street level, you'll get a lot of the same feeling that you get in many of the major cities in the United States. Commercial chains, restaurants, pharmacies, bus stops, car traffic, and busy sidewalks. When you look up, however, you get the sense that you're in a canyon made of skyscrapers. One thing that really distinguishes Chicago from other North American cities is the brown line of the L. Now, the L is Chicago's metro system, except it isn't quite a subway. Most of the L runs above ground. The brown line, or the loop, circles downtown on elevated tracks made from what seems like bronze and gold-painted steel. Many of the tracks run right above the streets below, which creates a very ornate, open tunnel sensation.
In New York, it's Fifth Avenue. In London, it's Oxford Street. In Chicago, it's Michigan Avenue, or as they call it, the Magnificent Mile. Bit of a fancy name for a road, but I will tell you it makes sense, because this is where all of the high-end shopping, like Coach and Gucci and Louis Vuitton and all of that good stuff, is located here in Chicago.
High-end shops, beautiful streetscapes, and the omnipresence of the twin-spired John Hancock Tower prevail through the street, with feels of cool, brisk wind. Wafting through the beautiful autumnal flower beds, filled with tulips in the spring, our sense of roasting coffee, sweet bakeries, damp concrete, and, occasionally, pizza. While not quite local, I personally quite enjoyed Chicago's Starbucks Reserve, with coffee that doesn't taste burnt for a change, a cozy museum-like atmosphere, and great views over the mile. Whatever you perceive classic, gilded, sophisticated 20th century architecture to be, imagine that at an over-exaggerated scale. That's what you'll see when you're wandering around Chicago, with a few exceptions. For one, along the Magnificent Mile sits the Old Water Tower. Now, this is a beautiful, very ornate stone water tower and its adjacent building that sits in the middle of one of Chicago's busiest, most modern streets. This was one of my favorite parts of Chicago, and a welcome reminder that Chicago, while a young city, has a story to tell. This was one of the few, if not the only, structures that remained after the Great Chicago Fire in the 19th century. A scent that took me by surprise was the faint smell of chocolate wafting through the streets throughout the afternoons. As it would happen, a chocolate factory sits nearby and the aroma breezes through the city daily, adding a warm and sweet touch to the experience.
One of the things I absolutely love about downtown Chicago is just how clean it is. I mean, think about New York City, and it's a charming place in and of itself, but Chicago is immaculately polished comparatively.
Now, to imagine yourself in the deep urban canyons of Chicago's downtown, imagine the sensation of decidedly crisp air dominated by the smell of fresh lake water throughout the urban canyons, coupled with damp concrete, auto fumes, and the various restaurants lining the streets. More often than not, this includes the scent of deep dish pizza. Being the quintessential American big city that it is, Chicago is heavily car dependent, and the city streets are filled with the sounds of traffic in whatever form that might be. Honking, mostly. This isn't to say that cars are the only thing echoing throughout the urban canyons. The L, being primarily above ground, generates the sounds of train cars screeching and trekking along their tracks from the elevated rails. I actually find this kind of endearing and a bit nostalgic, although I can't figure out why.
Now, right in between the Loop and the lakefront is Millennium Park. It is absolutely gorgeous, because you have that real juxtaposition, right, between greenery, although this time of year it's more like orangery, but also one of the most beautiful skylines, in my opinion, in the world. And you gotta think, some of the best architecture of the 20th century came out of Chicago, and so it's on full display here. Now, Millennium Park is also home to a pretty interesting little sculpture you may have seen or heard of. Now, formally it's called Cloud Gate, but locals call it the Bean. Here's why.
Affectionately known as the Bean, Cloud Gate is a massive, silver, reflective bean-shaped sculpture right at the edge of downtown that reflects literally everything around it. Like a giant mirror. Cloudgate really captures the essence of Chicago's visual experience for me because the whole place is so reflective. The city feels very blue, primarily because the glass skyscrapers reflect both the vibrant blue water of Lake Michigan and the blue skies above. Cloudgate really amplifies that.
Now, without a singular doubt, Chicago has one of the best riverfront walks in the entire country, and possibly the world. Not only is it astoundingly beautiful with really, really cool architecture, and of course Chicago is famous for its architecture, the water itself is super fresh and aqua blue, and that's because over 100 years ago, engineers reversed the flow of the Chicago River to avoid pollutants and sewage problems and things like that. So this is all flowing in from Lake Michigan. So not only is it gorgeous, but it smells nice. Not something you can say about a lot of rivers.
As you navigate the breathtaking riverfront on a chilly, breezy autumn evening, the fresh, marine-scented water wafts through the air. The sounds of water rippling and clapping against the concrete barriers join the sounds of music from the waterside restaurants and bars, and auto traffic roaring above. The beauty of Chicago's 20th century architecture sits on full display here, with landmarks such as the Wrigley Building, Tribune Tower, and Marina City towering in spectacles of glass, steel, and light over the sparkling water.
What do y'all think? Most beautiful city in the United States? Who's to say?
Among the older and more beautiful structures in the Chicago Loop is the Art Institute. Some of the most stunning works of art I've ever seen were in this gallery, including an entire exhibit dedicated to Monet, one of my favorite painters. The classic American farmer couple painting titled American Gothic lives here as well, along with some pieces that may or may not have been made famous by Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Speaking of Ferris Bueller, there's a pretty important tower in Chicago that goes by, well, many names.
When talking to a Chicagoan, don't call it the Willis Tower, call it the Sears Tower, or they will find you.
Atop what was once the tallest building in the world, the panorama of Chicagoland comes to life. Sloane put it perfectly in Ferris Bueller's Day Off when she said, "The city looks so peaceful from up here." Looking out over the sea of skyscrapers and parks, with a hazy and chilly view of the endless Lake Michigan in the distance, you get a sense of peace and security. Everything below you seems to move in slow motion, and you really get the sense that you're on top of the world, especially considering how flat the Illinois landscape is. Chicago seems to gradually pile up onto itself as it approaches the shore of the aqua blue Lake Michigan, until it finally peaks as a mountain of high-rises and skyscrapers gazing over the ocean-like lake. The most thrilling view of the city, in my opinion, is from the extended glass box poking out of the edge of the 1,300-foot-tall skyscraper.
If my mother hates anything about me traveling, it's that I make a point every time to find the most dangerous-looking ledge at the highest point of every city. And so, Mom, I hope you're watching this.
From here, in addition to watching the city move right beneath your feet, you experience the seemingly eternal sprawl of Chicagoland, golden in the afternoon sun, off into the hazy, flat horizon. Speaking of hazy horizons, Lake Michigan from above disappears into the distance, rounding out with the shape of the Earth and looks just like the ocean. But it's not just the water that gives this great lake an oceanic appearance.
Most people don't think of the beach when they think of Chicago. That makes total sense. They've got some beautiful beaches right here alongside Lake Michigan. And the atmosphere here is so different than what you would find on an oceanic beach, but at the same time, it's so relaxing, so peaceful. Now, I do imagine that in the summertime, these beaches are absolutely packed with people. But right now, on a crisp October morning, it's virtually silent. Other than the sound of the very softly clapping waves coming from the lake, very different than in the ocean where the waves are much bigger. You get the sense of fresh water, but you get that mixture of the fresh water with the fall and the fall leaves off in the distance. So it's very strange to me. I've never been to a New England beach in the fall, but I imagine it's similar with the salt water in the fall. The ambiance is just beautiful. There's people out walking their dogs. The air is actually a little warmer than I expected simply because the sun is peering right down. There are no trees or skyscrapers blocking the way. It's a really beautiful, peaceful ambiance out here. Now, something that I think is pretty important in every big city like this is the presence of some type of natural oasis in the heart of the city. So for places like New York, that's Central Park. Here in Chicago, it's Lincoln Park, complete with the Lincoln Park Zoo, a natural museum, an observatory, and on top of all of that, it's right on the shore of Lake Michigan.
Lincoln Park in the fall is breathtakingly colorful and serene. Cool, dry, breezy air billows inland from the gargantuan lake, whose scents of fresh water join the park's smells of wet soil, dewy grass, and fall leaves. Off in the distance, you'll hear the sounds of trains, sirens, cars, whistling wind, and the softer up-close sounds of birds and geese. I recently ran a few polls on some of the best skylines in North America, and it seems like y'all agree. Chicago has the most aesthetically pleasing skyline on this side of the world, at least architecturally. The views of the downtown loop are gorgeous from Lincoln Park, and as you loop around the lakeshore, the mountainous horizon of glass and steel skyscrapers, beautifully reflecting the aqua blue lake water, come even closer into view, with the black steel John Hancock Tower dominating the scene. Chicago's food scene is surprisingly diverse and multicultural, but to really capture the tastes of the city, we've got to dive into the staple dishes and meals that simply scream out, "This is Chicago, Illinois." Here are a few of the tastes that really capture the spirit of the Windy City. Chicago-style hot dogs. A Chicago-style hot dog comes with yellow mustard, green sweet pickle relish, white onion, pickled sport peppers, and celery salt. Now, this is all fine and dandy, but another important trait is that ketchup never goes on a Chicago hot dog. Ever. I had mine at a place called the Hot Dog Box in the Loop, but hot dog stands along the lakefront are far cheaper. Goose Island beer. Brewed right here in Chicago, Goose Island beer, in this case the 312, is fresh, a bit tart and cool. This golden ale is perfect for prepping you for what's coming next. Deep dish pizza. I get it. There's a long-standing debate amongst New Yorkers and Chicagoans on whose style of pizza is king, but frankly, I just don't see how there's a contest. Chicago deep dish is the thickness and density of lasagna with a thick, flaky, crispy golden crust, a sea of warm tomato sauce, and a heck of a lot of cheese. Biting into one of these slices, which you have to do with a fork if you get a medium-sized pizza, is like biting into pure comfort and warmth. I exaggerate not, I would eat the entire pie myself, each time. I had deep dishes daily at restaurants ranging from Lou Malnati's. I found this one to be the least exciting and probably the most tourist catering, to Giordano's, which in my opinion this was the best one, hands down. If you're in Chicago, go check it out. And Gino's, which is a location visited by decades of celebrities. Italian beef sandwiches. Chicago is known for its Italian beef, and at Al's Beef in the River North neighborhood, I tasted this heavy, greasy delicacy for myself. The sandwich is filled with very spicy deli-cut beef and is dripping in grease and sauce. Alongside provolone and a side of gravy, this sandwich will warm you right up on a chilly Midwestern fall day. Gleaming glass skyscrapers, rows of brick houses and streets, the rusty and yet beautiful elevated L tracks stringing along throughout the city, the clapping sound of choppy waves along Lake Michigan, and the bustle of middle America living their lives in the big city. That's Chicago. A massive, glimmering city with a touch of Midwest nice, a little grunge and grit, and a strange sense of familiarity everywhere you turn, almost as if you've been here your whole life. I started this journey by noting that so many have described Chicago as the most American-feeling city in the US, and I'm realizing that I concur. The thing about Chicago is that it's not pretentious. It doesn't try to outshine anyone or hold itself up in this position of self-importance. It's just Chicago. It's amazing. It's easily one of the most beautifully designed cities I've ever seen, has incredible art and culture, sits on a stunning, bright aqua blue lake, and boasts some of the best pizza I've ever eaten. But it's just Chicago. It's home to millions of people. It's where life happens. It's where generation upon generation toughs it out through the bleak winters to celebrate all summer long. It's a quintessential American city that doesn't try to be one of the best cities in the country. It just is one of the best cities in the country. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.